The first sound in the frozen village is silence. A silence so heavy it presses into the chest. A silence that feels carved from the same ice that grips the earth. The houses stand hunched against the cold, their roofs sagging under snow that never melts, their chimneys breathing faintly into the pale sky. Outside the air waits, sharp as knives, colder than thought, colder than breath, a cold that burns when it touches skin. Inside, people stir slowly, wrapped in blankets, swaddled in reindeer hides, their bodies heavy not only with sleep, but with the weight of surviving another night. Before you drift off, do me a small favor and tap the like button and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Morning in the Russian far north is not gentle. It is not a slow stretch beneath soft quilts, not a yawn followed by sunlight spilling into windows. It is the sudden awareness of air so bitter that your eyelashes feel stiff before you rise, the sound of wood snapping inside the stove as the embers gasp their last, the realization that unless you rise now, unless you feed the fire, the cold will creep in fully and steal the warmth from everything. In many homes, it is the grandmother who rises first, her hands gnarled, her breath puffing in clouds as she pushes herself upright. She does not wait for comfort. There is none. She reaches for wood stacked nearby, splits already made the night before, slides them into the iron belly of the stove, and blows until sparks catch, flames leap, and the sound changes from silence to a crackling roar. The glow spreads slowly, licking the walls, throwing shadows across frost that has formed inside the house, on windows, on the beams above, even on the edges of blankets. Children turn in their sleep, pressing closer together, their breath rising in mist, their scarves still tied around their mouths from the night. A father groans softly, pulling his head from beneath a fur, his beard already stiff with ice crystals that formed as he slept. He blinks at the fire, rubs his hands together, and mutters a word of thanks to the woman who fed it. Everyone knows the fire is life. Without it they would stiffen and freeze where they lie. The stove hisses as a kettle is set upon it, frost still clinging to its iron sides, melting into droplets that hiss into steam. Soon tea will be poured, dark and bitter, sometimes sweetened with sugar if any remains, sometimes softened with milk, sometimes plain, the taste secondary to the warmth it spreads through the chest. Children stir fully now, their eyes heavy, their faces pale beneath the flush of cold. They sit up, scarves around their necks, still stiff, mittens clutched beneath quilts. Their mother hands them bread, baked flat days before, blackened at the edges, dense and heavy, spread with butter that has to be chipped with a knife from its frozen block. They eat quickly, their voices hushed, their eyes already darting toward the frost on the windows, knowing that outside waits the endless white. Fathers and older sons eat in silence, chewing slowly, feeling strength return to their bodies. They will need it. The herd waits, scattered across the snow, pawing at drifts to find moss, the reindeer their lifeblood, their transport, their clothing, their food. Dogs circle already, their fur stiff with frost, their breath rising in steady clouds. The men wrap themselves tighter, pulling on boots lined with fur, tugging coats around their shoulders, tying scarves high until only their eyes show. Children watch them with solemn faces, knowing that one day they too will pull on boots this way, will step into the same white silence with ropes and lassos, will learn the art of survival, not from books, but from frost and fire. For a moment, though, everyone lingers near the stove. Hands stretch out toward its glow, mittens steaming faintly, eyes squinting against the smoke that curls upward, finding every crack in the roof. Children laugh softly as their mittens sizzle from dampness. Mothers scold them gently for leaning too close. Fathers mutter about the work ahead. The fire roars, the kettle hisses, and for a brief span of minutes the chum or hut or cabin feels almost warm. But morning does not wait. The chores are endless, the cold relentless, the herd restless. The father pulls on his hood, pushes open the door, and a blade of air cuts into the warmth, carrying frost with it. Breath bursts from his mouth, freezing instantly, falling in clouds. He squints into the horizon, endless white stretching into forever, the herd just visible in the distance, their antlers stark against the sky. Behind him, the children crowd at the doorway, peering out, their cheeks already burning from the bite of cold. Their mother pulls them back inside, scolding softly, pulling quilts higher, tucking scarves tighter. The day has begun. The fire burns again, smoke rises into the sky. The herd waits across the tundra, and the people of the far north rise from their quilts, their reindeer hides, their hard beds of wood and straw, and take their first steps into the cold that rules their lives. Morning is not an invitation here. It is a command. The tundra does not forgive. The tundra does not wait. Every day begins with the same truth: survival or nothing. And so they rise, they eat, they dress, they step out into the endless white, carrying fire in their lungs and frost on their lashes, ready to endure once more what the world beyond cannot imagine. From outside, the dwelling looks like a stubborn shape pressed into the white, a dark triangle of hides, or a low wooden box with a crooked chimney, or a humped earth shelter whose doorway is rimmed with hoarfrost. It could be a chum stitched from reindeer skins, a log isba set on stilts above permafrost, a plank shack patched with felt and tin. Names and timbers change, but the purpose is the same: to hold a small circle of warmth against a universe of cold. You come near, and the first thing you notice is the sound of it breathing. Not a house, not a tent, something alive. The stove inside exhales a low iron hum. The chimney ticks and whispers. The walls creak as the cold tightens them like a fist. Step to the threshold and you meet the antechamber, a little throat of space built to keep the cold from charging straight at the heart. In a village hut, this is a tiny tambor, a second door cut off from the main room. In a chum, it's a flap within a flap, hides layered so the wind has to bend and hesitate before it can get in. Boots are kicked free of snow here, crusts knocked loose with a stick, ice whisked off with a scrap of fur. Hooks along the wall carry mittens as stiff as boards. A rope waits there too to tie things down when the wind decides to grab and tear instead of breathe. You take your first inhale of smoke, sharp, resinous, a sting behind the eyes, and it tells you more than any words could. The fire is alive, which means everyone else can be. Inside, light is a thing that must be made, not given. In daytime it comes in thinly, a weak blade through frost-laced windows, or a ghostly glow through the smoke hole. At night, flames and embers decide what you see. The red rim of a kettle, the sheen on a spoon, the white glitter of frost feathers creeping along roof poles, where warm breath met frozen hide and negotiated a truce. In a log house, panes are filmed with ice so thick the world beyond is a smear of blue. In a chum, sunlight is a rumor that slips down the pipe and dissolves in smoke. Either way, the room gathers itself close around the stove, as if the walls are leaning in for warmth too. Every home here is built with the cold in mind, which is to say, every home is built like a defense. In a village hut, logs lie one upon another, their seams rammed tight with moss and wool, the outside chinked with clay that the frost will try to gnaw away all winter. The floor sits high on posts so summer's thaw won't twist it. The corners are braced like elbows pressed against the wind. A chum is ribs and skin, long poles tied at the crown, and splayed wide, hides overlapped from earth to peak, so the gale meets not a wall, but a field that bends and slides its teeth away. Over time the smoke cures the hides dark and slick. Your hand on them comes away smelling of fire and animal. The stove is the heart, always the heart. In a village house it's a squat brick giant that fills a corner. Once it was large enough to sleep on top, warm bricks under the blanket, steam rising from your hair. Sometimes it still is. In a chum the heart is iron, blackened and hungry, a belly that must be fed day and night. People speak of stoves with the same language they use for kin. This one is greedy, that one sulks. The old one was patient, the new one snaps. You learn its moods by the sounds it makes. The quick sappy spit of fresh larch, the steady roar of seasoned birch, the whisper of dung cakes, when wood is scarce and the forest far. The pipe ticks, the dampers cough, sparks sometimes ring inside like tiny bells. Children learn early the rituals that keep the heart beating, how to stack the first fire like a small house, air twig, split, log, how to lay the kettle so it sings, but does not steal too much heat, how to crack the door a finger's width to sweeten a sulky flame. Heat in the far north is never free. It is a currency you earn and spend with care. You sit close to the stove and your face grows pink while your back remembers the world outside. You dry mittens held by their cords like captured birds, and a hiss jumps from them as the ice flees. You rotate boots so the felt within won't scorch. You hang fish strips high in the smoke to brown and sweeten. You swing a pot off and on the ring like a planet in an orbit, closer for the rolling boil, farther for the long simmer. Everything is arranged in concentric circles of heat. Children, old bones, dogs in the warmest reach, tools and laundry in the middle weather, raw ice and outer garments at the edge where warmth is a threat as much as a gift. Walls tell stories. In the village house, icons once looked down from a red corner, their gilt dulled by soot, a towel embroidered with berries and antlers pegged beneath. Now it might be a calendar with last year's days, a photograph of a child in a town school uniform, smiling out of another climate, a hunting rifle with a strip of cloth, tied to the barrel so bare skin won't kiss metal by mistake. In the chum, cords run between poles, with everything hung at the right hand's reach, harness straps oiled and looped, the bone awl, the needle case, a pouch of black tea, a twist of salt, a bundle of sinew stripped and dried, the little whetstone like a river pebble. From a line near the smoke hole hangs frozen fish softening, a pale crescent that will become curls of stroganina shaved straight from its glittering body. The roof wears frost lace that ebbs and flows with the stove's breath. In the coldest mornings it drips as the room brightens, and a grandmother's hand moves without looking to shift a quilt or catch the drop in her palm. There is a map in the floor that only the foot remembers, the warm path between stove and bedding, the cool island where snow always finds a way to crawl, the safe square where a toddler can sit and not be kicked by a boot or kissed by a spark. Beds are not beds the way the word sounds elsewhere. They are platforms and piles, layered hides over boards, a drift of quilts that smells of wood smoke and wool fat. The family lies shoulder to shoulder, heads into the room, feet toward the outer skin. You can tell who went out in the night by the footprint of cold on their blanket, by the shiver that runs along the pile when they return and bring a gust of knife-edged air with them. Food in the tundra is never casual. In places where winters last 9 months and summers are brief flashes of mud and mosquitoes, Food is not chosen. It is fought for, preserved, stretched, and honored, as the only bridge between one season and the next. The Russian far north teaches its people quickly, you cannot survive without fire reindeer and food that is strong enough to keep the cold from eating you alive. Meals here are not a pause in work, they are part of the work, as vital as chopping wood or checking the herd, and each one carries the memory of centuries. The morning begins with the stove, as always. Water is melted from ice blocks, hacked from the river or scooped as snow from outside. A kettle sings slowly, the steam curling up to join the smoke hanging beneath the roof. Tea is brewed dark and bitter, poured into enamel cups chipped by years of use. If there is sugar, it is used sparingly, one cube broken and shared, a luxury measured by weight and memory. Sometimes milk is added, frozen hard and chipped off in pale chunks that melt slowly in the liquid, leaving a faint richness. Children wrap their hands around the cups, their red cheeks glowing as they sip, the warmth spreading through their chests like a second fire. Breakfast is heavy, for it must carry bodies through hours of labor in air that steals energy with every breath. Black bread, baked days before, and stored in cloth, is warmed on the stove, its crust cracking, its inside dense and sour. Fat is spread across it, sometimes butter, more often melted lard or reindeer tallow. The flavor is strong, smoky, clinging, but it is what keeps hands steady on the axe and feet moving through the drifts. If fish has been caught and frozen, it is carved into ribbons of stroganina, raw, thin curls that crunch between teeth, their oil sharp and clean, eaten with a pinch of salt. If a reindeer has been slaughtered recently, marrow bones are split and sucked, the fat hot and rich, eaten raw as the steam still rises. This is not indulgence, it is necessity. In the tundra, fat is armor, and without it no coat is enough. Lunch is built from what can be boiled. A pot of broth bubbles on the stove all day, water darkened by bones, fat shimmering on the surface. Into it go chunks of reindeer meat, sometimes potatoes brought up from the south, sometimes carrots, sometimes barley. The soup is never the same twice, never elaborate but always strong. Bread is dipped into it, soaking up grease, softening its chew. Children slurp eagerly, their laughter loud in the smoky tent, broth dripping down their chins. Adults eat slower, spoonful by spoonful, their shoulders softening as warmth seeps back into their bones. Dogs circle the edge of the chum or hut, their eyes bright, their noses twitching at the smell. Scraps are tossed to them, cartilage bones gnawed clean by human teeth, because they too must endure, and their endurance is tied to the herd. Dinner is the heaviest meal, prepared when the day's labor is done, when the reindeer are tethered and the wood stacked, and the snow cleared from the roof. Bread is baked flat on pans, blackened at the edges, torn into steaming hunks. Meat is roasted over coals, the fat hissing, smoke filling the room. Sausages made from blood and fat are boiled until they burst, eaten quickly while still steaming. Sometimes there is fish boiled whole, its eyes cloudy, its flesh flaking apart, its skin slipping into broth. Sometimes berries preserved from summer are spooned into bowls of porridge, their sweetness sharp, a reminder that the land can give gentleness as well as hunger. Preservation is the quiet work that underlies every meal. Fish are split and frozen in the open air, stacked like planks, their bodies stiff as boards, until the knife scrapes ribbons from them. Meat is stored outside, hung high where dogs and foxes cannot reach, frozen into stone that will last for months. Fat is melted and stored in skins, scooped as needed, its smoky taste seeping into every dish. Berries and mushrooms gathered in the brief warmth of summer are dried or frozen, tucked into sacks that are brought out in deep winter as treasures. Each meal is not only about today, but about survival weeks or months ahead. Food is shared always. A neighbor comes and is offered bread and broth before words are even exchanged. A guest steps into the chum and is given tea, even if the family has little left. Children are fed first, their bowls filled before the adults take their share. It is not courtesy, it is law. In a land where hunger is always waiting, food is a bond, a promise, a defense. The smells of food define the home as much as smoke does. The sharp tang of boiling blood sausage, the heavy sweetness of melting fat, the sour earthiness of black bread, the salt crisp scent of fish stripped thin, all of them cling to walls, to clothes, to hair. They are not refined smells, but they are honest. They are the smells of survival, of life wrestled from a land that gives nothing freely. And yet, for all the heaviness, there is joy in food. Children laugh as they steal scraps of bread, their eyes bright as they lick grease from their fingers. Families sit close, shoulders pressed, sharing bowls, their voices low and steady. Elders murmur stories as they chew slowly, their eyes closing as they taste marrow that reminds them of winters long past. Food is never just fuel, it is memory, tradition, community. Each bite ties the eater not only to the present, but to all those who endured before them, who ate the same bread, the same fish, the same broth in the same smoke. In the tundra, food is a ceremony disguised as necessity. It is what keeps hands from stiffening, what warms the belly against the wind, what lets laughter survive in the face of cold. It is life boiled in kettles, roasted on coals, frozen in slabs, shared in bowls. Without it, the stove's fire would mean nothing. The reindeer's gifts would be wasted, and the people themselves would vanish into the silence of snow. Water in the tundra is not something you pour from a tap or collect in glass. It is a thing buried, hidden, frozen into stone, locked away by ice so hard it can ring beneath an axe like metal. In the Russian far north, where the temperature falls to 60 below, water must be hunted the same way food is hunted, drawn out of the land with sweat and fire. Every drop that steams from a kettle is the result of labor, of risk, of cold gnawing at hands until they ache. In the tundra, thirst is not quenched, it is defeated. When the morning chores begin, someone is always sent for water. Children learn young that this is their duty, though even grown men curse the weight of it. They take axes, picks, or sharp poles and drag sleds behind them, the air cutting their lungs as they walk toward the river. The snow lies deep and deceptive. What looks like a smooth surface hides currents of ice beneath, layers of snow crusted so hard it must be broken piece by piece. Dogs trot alongside, their breath a cloud, their paws sinking into the drifts. The village trail to the river is marked by years of passage, but storms can erase it overnight, leaving travelers to carve it new each day. At the riverbank, silence hangs heavy. The water lies locked beneath meters of ice, invisible, hidden, unreachable without effort. The men raise their axes and bring them down with sharp cracks that echo across the frozen plain. Chips fly, white and blue shards that glitter briefly before falling into the snow. They strike again and again, each blow ringing like a bell, until at last a slab is broken free, a block of frozen river pried loose and hauled up with gloved hands. It weighs as much as a child, heavy and sharp, its surface gleaming like glass, its edges biting through mittens if not careful. Children strain their small bodies against the sleds, dragging the slabs one by one, their breath ragged, their cheeks burning with frost. Sometimes the ice gives way, and water bursts through, black and sudden, steaming in the frigid air. The men crouch quickly, dipping buckets, their hands shaking, water freezing to the rims even as they lift them. The surface seals again in minutes, the crack closing as if the river itself resents being disturbed. The buckets must be carried quickly before they become solid ice. Many times the only water that makes it home is ice in another shape, waiting to be coaxed back into liquid with fire. In the chum or hut, the slabs are stacked near the stove, leaning like pale monuments. When they are set into kettles or pots, they hiss as the fire licks them, steam rising in curls that fill the smoky air. Melting takes time, hours sometimes, and it consumes fuel, which is always scarce. Wood split with aching arms, dung gathered in summer, branches dragged for kilometers. All of it is burned to turn stone back into liquid. In this way, water is not just thirst quenched, it is labor made visible in the steam that fogs the walls, in the droplets that drip from the roof beams. Children hover near the stove, waiting. They dip tin cups into the kettle before it has fully melted, their mouths eager, their mothers scolding them for impatience. The water tastes of smoke, faintly metallic from the iron, but it is life in their throats, a warmth spreading down into their bellies. Adults drink more slowly, conserving, sharing in turns. Even tea begins with this struggle. The leaves may be brought from far away, the sugar rare, but the water is always earned, always pulled from the earth at cost. Snow, too, is melted when the river is too far, or when storms bury the banks. Children scoop it into buckets with mittened hands, their arms red with cold, their breaths loud in the silence. They bring it in mounds, only to watch it collapse into nothing in the pot. It takes a basin of snow to make a handful of water, a mountain of drifts to fill the needs of a family. Still, it is done, again and again, because thirst will not wait. The water is used sparingly, never wasted. A kettle is poured into cups, and the rest is kept for soup, for washing, for steam baths, taken rarely in tents lined with hides. Laundry is done with a basin so precious that each garment is wrung carefully, the water reused for the next. Even hands are washed with care, not from abundance but from discipline. Every drop carries the memory of axes striking ice, of sleds dragged through snow, of fires fed with wood cut in bitter cold. And always when the family drinks, they know that tomorrow the same path must be walked, the same slabs hauled, the same fire coaxed, to turn ice into life. Water is not given in the far north, it is demanded, fought for, and earned. Yet in this struggle, there is a strange beauty. The sound of an axe striking ice, ringing across the silence. The sight of children laughing as they tumble into snow with buckets larger than their arms. The glow of steam curling through smoky air, rising like ghosts, filling the tent with warmth. These moments make the water taste sweeter, more alive than any spring or tap could offer. In the Russian far north, water is not an afterthought. It is a ritual, a daily reminder that life itself is carved from ice, lifted from rivers that hide their black depths beneath a shell of glass, melted by fire coaxed into being with aching arms. To drink here is not to refresh, it is to endure. The stove burns steadily, its glow pulsing like a heart, but it is greedy, and the family knows it. Every hour, every day, it demands wood, and wood does not walk into the tent by itself. The work begins long before dawn and ends only when bodies collapse into quilts, but even then someone wakes to feed the fire. In the Russian far north, life is not measured in days of the week, but in the rhythm of chores, endless, repeating, each one stitched to survival like the sinew threads that bind hides into boots. The men shoulder axes, heavy iron heads that bite like teeth into frozen trunks. They march into the forest, boots crunching on snow that groans beneath their weight, dogs trotting at their heels. The trees stand silent, their branches heavy with rime, their bark armored in frost. Swinging an axe here is not like swinging one in a southern forest. The wood is hard as stone, the cold tightening its fibers until each blow rings like a bell. Shards burst outward, glittering blue in the pale sun, scattering across the snow like glass. Sweat prickles beneath coats, dangerous in air this sharp, but the work cannot pause. Without wood, the stove will die. Without the stove, the family will die. Logs are split, stacked, dragged on sleds back toward the village, their weight bending shoulders, their ends scraping furrows into the snow. Horses or reindeer help, their breath steaming, their hooves striking sparks of frost, but still the men's arms tremble, their faces stiff with ice that grows in their beards, with every exhale. Back at the chum or hut, women bend over their own work. Sewing is never finished. Boots wear through, mittens tear, hides stretch and split in the cold. Bone needles flash in the firelight, sinew thread drawn tight through thick fur, each stitch strong enough to resist the wind. Mothers teach daughters by placing their hands over theirs, guiding clumsy fingers until they learn the rhythm of push and pull, bite and knot. Mistakes are not small things here. A boot stitched poorly means frostbite. A mitten sewn badly means hand stiffened and useless. Women sew with precision, with urgency, their backs bent, their eyes narrowed against the smoke, their lips pressed tight in concentration. Laundry is done in basins beside the stove. Water melted from ice with aching labor. Garments are stiff, reeking of smoke and sweat, and they must be scrubbed until knuckles crack, soap rubbed in until the cloth softens, beaten against boards until dirt loosens. The garments are wrung out, their water dripping onto the floor, steaming as it hits the fire's heat. Then they are hung outside, where they freeze stiff as planks, sleeves outstretched like arms, legs frozen mid-step. Later they are thawed inside again, the cycle repeating, garments smelling always of smoke and frost. Children are not idle. They carry wood in small arms, their boots sinking deep into drifts, their scarves stiff with ice. They fetch water, dragging sleds with blocks of river ice, their laughter bright but their bodies trembling with effort. They sweep snow from the roof before its weight collapses the structure, their mittens scraping against timber. They guard the reindeer, lasso calves for practice, feed dogs scraps, their voices rising in shrieks of joy even as their fingers sting. Work and play blur together, because in the tundra even games are apprenticeships for survival. Reindeer must be checked constantly. Men walk among the herd, scanning for injuries, listening for the sound of wolves. They rub soot into cuts, smear fat on frostbitten hides, watch calves stumble on spindly legs. They count and recount, each animal known, each one necessary. A lost reindeer is not only lost meat or hide, it is a blow to the future, to the family itself. Dogs circle the herd, barking, their eyes flashing, their paws blackened with frost. The men murmur songs to calm the animals, their voices carried faintly on the wind, words older than memory, promises whispered into fur. Inside again, the stove is fed with logs, its belly roaring, the pot set upon it bubbling with broth. Meals are prepared in moments stolen between tasks, blood sausage boiling, bread baked flat against the iron, fish sliced raw into ribbons. The air fills with smells sharp and strong, heavy with fat, smoke, and grease. The family eats quickly, crouched near the fire, spoons clinking, mittens still dangling from their cords. Then the bowls are set aside, and the work resumes. There is no pause, no weekend, no day of rest. Even at night, someone must rise to check the fire, someone must walk the edge of the herd, someone must listen for wolves. Sleep is broken, scattered, never whole. Bodies ache, eyes blur, fingers stiffen, but the work is never done. The tundra does not allow idleness. And yet, for all its weight, there is dignity in the labor. A stack of split wood is a wall against death. A boot stitched tight is a shield for the body. A pot of soup bubbling on the stove is victory over hunger. Each task is survival made visible, proof that the family has endured another day. In the Russian far north, work is not endless because the people are cursed. It is endless because the land demands it, because every act of life is also an act of defiance against cold that waits to erase them. The work never ends, and neither does the will to continue it. Children in the far north grow up in a world where the air itself is an enemy, yet their laughter is sharp and clear, ringing across the snow as if it could frighten the cold away. They are born into quilts heavy with reindeer hides, their first breaths fogging the air inside smoky huts or chums, their first sights the glow of a stove and the silhouettes of parents bent over fire. From the beginning, their lives are shaped by survival, but they are also shaped by warmth, by closeness, by the bonds of family that press tighter than the wind pressing against the walls. A toddler learns balance not on floors of wood, but on drifts of snow packed by boots. He stumbles after his father, dragging a stick in the powder, mimicking the sweep of a lasso, though his arms are too weak to throw it. His cheeks are bright red, his scarf frozen stiff, but his laughter bursts from him, echoing across the white. A little girl sits by her grandmother near the stove, a bone needle in her hand, trying to push it through scraps of hide. Her stitches are crooked, her fingers clumsy, but her eyes are wide with concentration, and every mistake she makes is patiently corrected. For children in the tundra, play is never just play. It is rehearsal for the work that will one day keep them alive. By the time they are 5, they are helping with chores. Small hands carry kindling, small boots stomp paths through snow, small arms drag water buckets that tip and spill. They complain, they laugh, they compete to carry the heaviest loads, but they learn all the same. By 10, they can harness a reindeer, lash rope, mend a torn mitten, and stir a pot of soup without spilling it into the fire. Their childhood is short, but it is not joyless. It is filled with games that train strength, with songs that carry tradition, with stories told by firelight that anchor them to their people. At night, children sleep piled together, quilts heavy on their bodies, scarves tied around their mouths to trap warmth. Their breath rises in mist, frosting the poles above them, but their dreams are not cold. They dream of reindeer bells, of dogs racing through drifts, of summers when berries swell red and rivers run free. Their parents watch them with pride, knowing that these children are not fragile. They are being carved by the land into people who can endure what others cannot. But there is another truth, one that weighs heavily. In many villages, children cannot stay. The government demands that they be educated, and so when they are 7, 8, sometimes younger, helicopters roar across the sky and land in a storm of snow. Children climb aboard, their scarves flapping, their mittens clutched in their laps. Mothers kiss their cheeks again and again, tucking charms into their pockets, whispering prayers. Fathers stand stiff, their jaws clenched, their hands gripping ropes too tightly. The herd shifts uneasily at the noise. Dogs bark frantically, and then the machine lifts, carrying the children away to towns hundreds of kilometers from home. In schools, they learn to read, to write, to calculate numbers their parents never used. They learn Russian, the language of the state, and forget pieces of their mother tongue. They eat food from plates instead of steaming bowls over a stove. They sleep in rows of beds instead of under quilts pressed against siblings. Some thrive, their eyes bright as they return in summer, eager to help with the herd, eager to mix new knowledge with old tradition. Others return restless, their gazes drifting toward horizons beyond the tundra, dreaming of roads, of cities, of lives their parents never imagined. This split shapes the children deeply. At home, they are loved fiercely, trained in skills of survival, wrapped in the smoke of tradition. At school, they are taught another way of life, one where survival is not fought for daily, where warmth is not earned with axe and fire. Some manage to carry both worlds, walking in each with confidence. Others are torn, belonging to neither fully, their futures uncertain. Parents know this, and their hearts hold both pride and sorrow. They want their children to have choices, to know more than they did, but they also know that each child carried away by helicopter may never return for good. Still, while they are young, the children belong to the tundra. They race across snow with dogs, their shrieks of laughter cutting through the silence. They build tunnels in drifts, collapsing them on each other in playful ambush. They sit with elders, listening to stories of spirits in the aurora, of ancestors who crossed the land before them, of herds so vast they darkened the horizon. They sing songs in voices high and clear, their cheeks glowing, their eyes shining with firelight. In their laughter, the cold loses some of its bite. In their games, the endless white feels less empty. In their presence, families endure, knowing that the tundra has not yet taken everything. Children are not only the future of the far north, they are its defiance, proof that life can not only survive here, but sing. The old ones sit close to the stove, their faces lined like cracked ice, their eyes pale with smoke, and years of watching horizons that never change. In the Russian far north, to reach old age is to achieve something few do. Many do not survive the decades of storms, the frost that eats fingers and toes, the hunger that gnaws silently through winters of scarcity. Those who do are not fragile. They are weathered, like the logs of the huts that lean but do not fall, like the hides of the chum that darken with smoke but still keep out the wind. An old man rises slowly in the morning, his joints stiff, his breath whistling from lungs long carved by cold air. His hands tremble as he feeds the stove, but he knows its moods better than any younger man. He listens to the hiss of sap, the roar of flame, and adjusts the logs with precision. His beard is crusted with frost even indoors, and when he walks outside wrapped in furs, his pace is slow but steady. He knows every reindeer by sight, every path by memory. His lasso does not fly as fast as it once did, but it still flies true. When he speaks, it is with few words, but those words carry the weight of experience that has kept his family alive through storms younger men have never seen. An old woman sits near the fire, her back bent, her fingers cracked and swollen from decades of sewing hides and scrubbing laundry in water that froze even as she worked. Yet her stitches are flawless. Even as her hands shake, the sinew threads are pulled through fur with strength, the seams sealed tight. She scolds her granddaughters gently, showing them again how to fold edges, how to knot threads, how to mend boots, so the wind cannot creep in. Her eyes are clouded, but her voice is sharp, her memory vast. She remembers migrations from decades past, storms that buried sleds, rivers that swallowed herds, summers when the mosquitoes rose in clouds so thick they smothered calves. She remembers, and she teaches, because memory itself is survival. The elderly are honored not with ceremony, but with reliance. Their stories are lessons, their presence reassurance. When a storm howls and the young grow anxious, the grandmother hums an old song, her voice trembling but steady, and the children quiet. When a reindeer goes missing and the men are unsure which trail to follow, the grandfather points with his mitten, recalling the way the herd moves when the wind shifts. When a child grows sick, it is the old woman who brews herbs gathered long ago in summer, who knows which roots to boil, which leaves to crush, which prayers to whisper as steam rises. Yet for all their wisdom, their bodies betray them. They cough at night, their lungs rattling in the smoky dark. Their knees ache from years of walking through drifts. Their backs curve from bending over fires. Teeth are lost. Eyesight fades. Ears grow dull. They endure pain without complaint, because complaint does not mend seams or feed fires. Death is close, always, and the old know it better than anyone. They do not speak of it with fear. They speak of it as inevitability, as natural as frost forming on poles. When a grandmother dies, her body is wrapped and carried into the snow. The earth thawed with fire so a grave can be dug, her memory carried in songs and stories. When a grandfather dies, the herd shifts uneasily, as if sensing the absence, as if feeling the tether to tradition loosen. Still, the old endure as long as they can, because they know their families need them. Children sit at their feet, listening as they speak of ancestors, of spirits, of the meaning of survival. Parents lean on their knowledge, grateful for guidance in decisions that could mean life or death. The elderly are not put aside in the tundra. They are central, woven into the fabric of the family, as tightly as sinew threads into hide. To outsiders, their lives may look small, confined to smoky huts, to sowing, to watching herds. But here their lives are vast. They are libraries of memory, fortresses of tradition, living bridges between the past and the present. They carry knowledge that no book holds, wisdom carved not in ink but in scars, in calluses, in the frostbite that claimed their fingertips, in the storms that whitened their hair early. In the Russian far north, the elderly are not measured by years. They are measured by endurance, by the storms survived, by the herds kept alive, by the children raised, by the fires fed. Their faces tell the story of the tundra itself, hard, scarred, but unbroken. And in their presence, the younger ones learn the most important truth of all, that survival is not only strength of body, but strength of spirit. The herd stirs restlessly, hooves pawing at the snow, heads lifting toward the horizon, as if some silent signal has passed among them. The moss beneath their feet has grown scarce, the ground scraped bare by weeks of grazing. Hunger pushes them onward, and when the reindeer move, the people must follow. In the Russian far north, you do not choose when to migrate. The land chooses, the herd chooses, and the family obeys. The day begins long before the sun rises, though in deep winter the sun barely rises at all. Inside the chum or the village hut, the stove roars one last time, fed with logs until its belly glows red. Breakfast is swallowed quickly. Black bread, steaming broth, tea gulped in haste, because the hours ahead will demand every scrap of strength. Then the dismantling begins. The home that has sheltered the family through nights of screaming wind is taken apart piece by piece. Poles are untied, their ends blackened from smoke, stacked in bundles. Hides are pulled from the frame, stiff with frost, folded and lashed with rope. Quilts, furs, pots, tools, all are gathered into neat bundles, each one necessary, each one precious. The sleds stand waiting, their wooden frames hardened by cold, their runners gleaming with frost. Reindeer are caught with lassos, their antlers tugged, their heads lowered. Harnesses are fitted, bells jingling faintly, as ropes are tied across their broad chests. They stamp and snort, steam bursting from their nostrils, hooves kicking at the snow. Dogs bark wildly, circling, their voices sharp in the frozen air. Children laugh as they try to help, their small hands clumsy on ropes, their scarves stiff around their faces. The scene is chaos, bells ringing, dogs barking, reindeer shifting, but it is a chaos shaped by centuries of rhythm. Everyone knows their role, every motion practiced countless times. At last the sleds are loaded. Poles stacked long, hides rolled tight. The stove itself carried like treasure, its pipe bundled separately. Quilts and furs are piled high, forming nests where children will huddle against their mothers, their eyes peeking out over layers of scarves. Men adjust ropes, tugging each knot, their faces set and serious. Women check bundles again, counting tools, pots, sacks of food, making sure nothing is left behind. Nothing can be forgotten, for the tundra does not forgive loss. Then the migration begins. A shout is given, reins are pulled, and the reindeer lean forward, their hooves digging deep, their bodies straining against the harness. The sleds creak, the runners hiss, and slowly the caravan moves. Snow squeaks beneath the weight, the line stretching across the white, like a dark thread sewn into endless cloth. The wind meets them at once, sharp and unyielding, tearing at scarves, driving snow into eyes, numbing fingers despite mittens. Faces stiffen, lashes freeze, breath bursts in clouds that crystallize instantly. But still they move, step by step, sled by sled, mile by mile. The land offers no comfort. The horizon is empty, sky and earth blending into one endless white. Landmarks are few, perhaps a low hill, a cluster of stunted trees, the faint shadow of a frozen river. Storms rise suddenly, erasing everything, the world dissolving into a blur of snow that blinds and disorients. In such moments the caravan huddles close, the reindeer pressed together, the people crouched low on sleds, waiting for the wind to soften. Children cry softly, their voices muffled by scarves, their mothers rocking them gently, whispering songs against the roar. Men shout to one another, voices torn away by the gale, eyes straining to keep sight of the herd. Hours feel like days, days like eternity. And yet, always the caravan endures. The reindeer push forward, their instincts guiding them toward grazing grounds, their bodies strong against the cold. The people trust them, their lives tied to the hooves that break the trail. Dogs dart alongside, their barks muffled by the wind, their bodies tireless even as ice clings to their fur. The sleds glide, creak, shudder, but they hold. Families huddle tighter, their bodies pressed together, warmth shared through closeness. At last, after hours or days of travel, a new place is chosen. The herd paws eagerly at the snow, finding moss beneath, their hunger satisfied. The sleds stop. The reindeer are unhitched, their bells falling silent. Dogs collapse into the snow, panting, curling into themselves for warmth. The family climbs down, their limbs stiff, their faces raw, their bodies aching, but the work is not finished. The new camp must rise before night falls. The poles are set upright, lashed together at the peak, spread wide at the base. Hides are pulled over them, stretched tight, lashed with ropes. Smoke-blackened skins carry the scent of countless journeys, their seams patched again and again. The stove is set in the center, its pipe piercing through the hides. Wood is fed into its belly, sparks flare, flames roar, smoke curls upward. Quilts and furs are spread across the floor, pots are hung, tools unpacked, mittens and boots thawed. Slowly the home takes shape again. fragile but fierce, a bubble of warmth in the white wasteland. Inside, children collapse into quilts, their cheeks flushed, their laughter bubbling despite exhaustion. Mothers set kettles to boil, fathers check the herd, dogs curl at the edge of the tent. Outside, the wind moans, the snow drifts, the night falls heavy. Inside, the stove glows, the smoke curls, the family breathes easy once more. This is migration in the far north. Not a choice, not an adventure, but a law written in frost and moss, in hunger and survival. The chum rises and falls, sleds groan and glide, families endure and move again, always following the reindeer, always obeying the land. And as the night deepens, as the stars glitter sharp above, the people know that tomorrow, or next month, or next season, the journey will begin again. The tundra does not forgive mistakes. It waits quietly, patient as a predator, and the moment you falter, it strikes. Dangers in the Russian far north are not hidden. They are everywhere, written in the air, in the silence, in the white horizon that seems endless, but is filled with traps. Every family knows the risks. Every elder has whispered warnings to children by firelight, and still, every season claims lives. The first danger is the cold itself. At 60 degrees Celsius, the air bites faster than teeth. A patch of skin left uncovered stiffens in minutes, whitening into frostbite. Fingers lose feeling, turn black, break like twigs if not saved. To work with bare hands in such air is unthinkable, but sometimes ropes must be tied. Snares adjusted, sleds repaired. Men grit their teeth and do it, their fingers burning, their hearts racing with the knowledge that each second is a gamble. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. Many old men in the tundra carry hands missing tips of fingers, scars where frost taught its lesson. Feet are no safer, boots patched poorly, socks too thin, a moment's wetness left unattended. These are enough to rot flesh, to cripple a man forever. The second danger is hunger. Winters are long, herds thin, storms brutal. If the reindeer moss freezes beneath an icy crust, the animals starve, their ribs showing, their legs weakening. Families slaughter them carefully, sparingly, using every piece, but each death is both sustenance and loss. A herd too small cannot carry families through migration, cannot provide hides for boots, cannot give milk for children. A winter of hunger leaves faces hollow, ribs sharp even under coats, eyes dull with fatigue. Parents eat less so, children can eat more. Sometimes it is enough, sometimes it is not. Wolves are a danger older than memory. They come in the dark, their howls rising across the frozen plain, carried on the wind like sirens. Reindeer shift nervously, their bells jingling faintly as they press together. Dogs bark frantically, their voices high and urgent, their bodies flashing through snow as they dart at shadows. Men rise from their quilts, pulling on boots, grabbing rifles or spears, their hearts pounding. The wolves circle, clever, patient, waiting for weakness, a calf that strays, a reindeer that stumbles. Shots ring out in the dark, sparks flashing, echoes swallowed instantly by the snow. Sometimes the wolves retreat, sometimes they do not. In the morning, tracks in the snow tell the story. A reindeer gone, blood staining white, bones scattered. The family eats that day, but with grief. The herd is smaller, the future more uncertain. There are dangers within the camp too. Fires that flare too high, sparks that leap from the stove and catch on hides, smoke filling the tent until lungs burn and eyes weep. Children stumble too close to kettles, their hands scalded by boiling water. Quilts left too near the stove smolder in silence, until flames wake the family in terror. Water, too, is dangerous. Rivers hidden beneath snow, their ice thin in patches, ready to crack beneath a boot. Men and women fall through, dragged out by ropes, their bodies shivering, skin freezing, lungs burning with cold. Many survive. Some vanish under the ice, their cries swallowed by black water. Sickness comes quietly, a cough that lingers, a fever that will not break, a wound that festers because no doctor waits in the tundra. Herbs boiled in kettles, fat smeared into cuts, prayers whispered into the smoke. Sometimes these heal, sometimes they do not. Families bury their dead in shallow graves, dug with axes, fires thawing the frozen earth enough to open it. Crosses or stones mark the spot, soon covered in drifts. The herd grazes nearby, their bells ringing faintly, indifferent to human grief. And then there is the danger of despair. Families who lose all their reindeer face a fate worse than hunger. Without animals, they cannot migrate, cannot build chums, cannot trade, cannot survive. They remain in place, stranded in a land that demands movement, their homes sagging, their spirits hollow. They watch the horizon as other herds pass, their own future gone. The children are carried away by helicopters to schools, the parents left behind to stare at snow that never ends. Their lives unravel, not with violence, but with silence. Yet, despite all these dangers, cold, hunger, wolves, fire, water, sickness, despair, the families endure. They know each threat intimately. They guard against them with skill, with vigilance, with tradition. Children are warned again and again. Tie your mittens, never stray from the herd, never step on river ice without testing it, never sleep without tending the stove. These are not rules, they are lifelines. And still, even with caution, loss comes. Every scar, every grave, every empty sled tells the story. But survival is not only measured in what is lost, it is also measured in what remains. A child who laughs despite frost on her lashes. A herd that moves forward even after wolves take one of their own. A stove that burns through another night without smoke filling the tent. Each victory, however small, is defiance against the land that tries to erase them. The dangers of the far north are relentless, but so is the will to live. And so the families endure, scars on their hands, grief in their hearts, fire in their stoves. They endure not because the land is gentle, but because they are strong enough to rise each morning and face its merciless silence again. Night falls on the tundra, like a lid closing over the world, and the smoke of the stove rises in a thin black thread, barely visible against the deepening sky. Families huddle inside their huts or chums, children curled beneath quilts, elders close to the fire, men and women finishing the last chores before sleep. Outside, the herd presses together, bells chiming faintly in the dark, dogs circling, their eyes flashing when the moon catches them. The silence is vast, broken only by the crack of trees in the frost, the sigh of wind pushing snow into new shapes, the low murmur of voices inside the home. In these hours when everything slows, people in the far north find time to think about what their lives mean, why they remain here, and what endurance really is. For many, the answer is simple. They stay because this is where their ancestors lived, and because the land has shaped them so completely that leaving would be like cutting away their own flesh. Their homes are not stone walls or streets, but the vast white itself, the endless sky, the reindeer paths that cross rivers and hills. The chum or hut is not just shelter, but a symbol, proof that humans can survive even where the earth seems intent on silence. To endure here is to belong to something greater than oneself, to be part of a story that stretches back through centuries of herding, hunting, migrating. Endurance in the tundra is not about comfort. It is about meaning. A stove that burns all night is not just warmth, it is triumph. A beating heart that says the family will live another day. A reindeer herd grazing under the stars is not just wealth, it is security, the promise of food, clothing, transport, survival. A child's laughter echoing through the smoke is not just joy, it is proof that life continues, that the land has not won, that the people are stronger than the frost. Each small act of survival, a log split, a pot of broth shared, a seam stitched tight, becomes a declaration: we endure, we do not yield. The modern world speaks often of choice, of the freedom to decide paths, to move where one wishes, to change lives like clothes. But here, choice is narrower. It is the choice to rise in the morning and feed the stove or let it die, the choice to walk out into the storm, to tend the herd or stay and risk hunger, the choice to slaughter a reindeer now or hope the herd lasts the winter. These choices are not luxuries. They are responsibilities, decisions that bind families together, decisions that remind them daily of the thin line between life and silence. And yet, within this narrowness, there is a different kind of freedom, the freedom of knowing exactly what matters. Food, fire, family, herd, everything else falls away in the tundra's silence. There are no illusions of plenty, no distractions of luxury. Life is stripped to its bones, and what remains is precious. The people here may not live long, but they live fully, aware of every breath, every bite, every spark. Elders often speak of endurance, not as suffering but as belonging. They tell their grandchildren that the tundra teaches lessons no school can: patience, humility, strength, the value of silence, the meaning of work. They say that to endure the tundra is to understand life itself, that everything is fragile, that everything must be tended, that nothing is owed, but everything can be earned. These lessons are not written in books. They are written in scars on hands, in smoke curling above huts, in the tracks of sleds across the snow. Sometimes outsiders ask why they do not leave, why they do not move south where winters are shorter and food is easier. The nomads shrug. For them, leaving is not freedom, it is exile. The tundra is harsh, but it is also theirs. It is the only place where their stories, their songs, their traditions make sense. To live elsewhere would be to live in someone else's rhythm, someone else's land. Better to face storms in their own world than to be comfortable in another's. So they endure. They rise each morning into the freezing air. They chop wood until their arms ache. They mend boots until their eyes blur. They guard herds until wolves vanish into the horizon. They bury their dead in frozen ground. They celebrate births beside smoky fires. They watch children laugh and grow, even knowing those children may one day leave for towns far away. Endurance here is not just survival. It is culture, identity, defiance. And when the night is deepest, when the aurora ripples green and violet across the sky, when the smoke of the stove drifts upward like a prayer, the families of the Russian far north sit quietly and feel a truth that outsiders rarely understand. That life does not need to be long to be meaningful. That comfort is not the same as happiness. That hardship can shape people into something stronger than stone. They know that endurance is not misery. It is honor. The tundra will always be merciless, but it will also always belong to them. And as long as smoke rises from chimneys, as long as reindeer bells ring faintly in the distance, as long as laughter survives inside huts of wood or skin, the people of the far north will endure. Repair is a season that never ends. Your fingers find the cracks, with a blind skill along the sill where the log shrank, at the seam where two hides meet, and the wind whispers. Moss is stuffed, felt tacked, a smear of soot-fat paste thumbed into a hunger line. A strip of bark is lashed over a rip like a bandage. The door gets its winter beard, rags hung along the jamb to make a moving seal, and a fur hangs as an inner curtain, so the room can blink instead of going blind when the outside crashes in. A little shovel and pan sit beside the threshold to take in the gift you do not want, the snow the wind has been trying to send you since the house was born. The sounds of a dwelling in the far north are their own weather. The roof booms when a load of snow lets go and slides. Somewhere a bucket clucks as a single drop of thawed frost falls and finds metal. The iron plate lifts with a scree that is both ancient and domestic. A dog sighs like an old man. A child laughs and then remembers to laugh softer. Sometimes in the deep night wood lets out a cracking note that is like a gun, and for a heartbeat everyone wakes and knows no, only the cold speaking to itself through the grain. Smell layers, never leaves smoke foremost, that dry pine and ash perfume that crawls into hair and cloth. Then fat when the pot is at the boil, then wet wool and damp felt, when laundry hangs in a grayscale garden over the hearth. Then the clean metal chill of river ice leaned against the wall, waiting its turn to become steam. In the village house there is sometimes the ghost of soap from a winter bath taken in buckets, the sweetness of yeast when dough is needed for flatbread. In the chum there is the animal breath of hides, faint and honest, the musk of reindeer that says, "We live because another life lives within our walls." Children learn the geometry of heat and hazard by watching hands. See how the old ones handle the stove lid with a stick, not fingers. See how the kettle's wire is wrapped in cloth, so it isn't a bite in waiting. See where the spark catcher stands when someone feeds the fire with dry split, so the little suns fly up and die in the net instead of in fur. They copy the choreography, the turn and open, the lay and close, the 3 backward steps, so the heart can take a breath. They learn that a wet mitten near iron is a wound, that a frozen boot on the wrong side of the room becomes a prison in the morning, that a cup warmed first with a splash of hot water will not shock your teeth and steal their life. In some houses there is a cellar, never dug like elsewhere, because earth here is a locked fist, but a box set into the cold, a crate outside banked in snow, a room that stays below freezing by design, so meat can hang and not argue. In others the store is the roof, fish like pennants, hide-wrapped packages that the fox admires but cannot reach. The door of such stores faces away from sun, because sun is a stranger. You do not always welcome in a land where the gift it gives is melt, and melt is trouble. There is a social map too. The stove's near corner is for elders, the far side where the draft slides in is where the quick-blooded sit. The place beside the door belongs to the one who always rises to answer the weather's knocks. A guest is placed where they can warm hand and foot, but not become part of the sleeping knot, honor and boundary marked by inches. A picture of a soldier's son lives above a shelf where the good cups wait for Sundays. A school bag with a town's dust still clinging to it lives beside the cord basket. Between these objects, old and new, the dwelling holds the long conversation a people must keep with itself to go on. Sometimes the home moves and reminds you it was born to. A chum comes down and goes up, and nothing is left but a blackened patch that the wind erases by noon. A hut lifts its feet on posts and is shored with stone and scrap, because the permafrost has rolled under it like a slow whale and tried to throw it. To live inside is to accept that the house is not a fortress against the land, but a companion that leans with it, breathes with it, suffers with it, heals itself each evening with hands and thread and heat. When the day deepens and the world outside hardens from blue to iron, the dwelling gathers its people inward. A pot mutters. A boot is turned. A stitch is bitten off. A story begins that everyone has heard but once again, because in its telling there is a rope braided from memory that is stronger than wind. Someone knocks snow from their hood under the outer flap, and the inner curtain trembles but does not open. For a heartbeat the cold leans against the wall, tasting the seam, and then the stove answers. A rafter drips. A child sighs into sleep, and you can almost believe the night will pass gently. This is what a home means here. Not a place to display life, but a machine to make it. A dwelling that holds back the cold is not a structure. It is a practice, a set of motions returned to every hour: feed, dry, mend, bank, seal, stir, breathe. The walls are only as strong as the hands that tend them. The heat is only as loyal as the fuel you paid for with your back and shoulders. And yet, when the wind rises and the horizon goes white, and the door's fur lifts like a warning, the little room does not fail you. You hear the heart, feel its pulse on your palm as you lift the lid, see your family's faces lean to the light, and you know for another day, in a land that does not give days easily, you have made a circle where life can stand.